Yay. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
We should be on the line.
Yep. Looks like we are. Pew, pew, pew.
Just give everyone a minute to show up, and also I've had some technical
Yep.
problems recently, so if anybody can't hear us or
People
you're,
usually. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
good way to sort out our
Good way
technical
to let
problems.
us know. Yeah. But I think we're good. I feel like our setup is finally stabilized.
Hopefully. So we definitely, if there's any problems remaining with this NDI stuff, I definitely want to have it sorted before all packed up.
For our stream. Yeah, totally.
Awesome. And so Ruben is speaking like there's no delay because sometimes with the
Woo,
NDI,
woo. Yeah.
your like
Sorry, that
lip
was just
sync is
me
out.
checking it. That looks good to me.
Ah, cool.
All right. Should we kick off?
Yeah.
Cool.
Fire when ready.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doof Game Over stream, Doof Media's exploration of the joy of play. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are back to talk about Crypt of the NecroDancer. Before we do that, I suppose, a quick reminder that our Discord is public. So if you want to participate in the game club, the best place to do that is to go to doofmedia.com/Discord, where you can, join in with streams and chat to people about the games and other things throughout the month. That's where you can do it.
Yeah. It's a fun community. There's lots of people playing. I spent half of this morning watching somebody else play Crypt who's a lot better than I am, which was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, should we get into it? So this month we've been playing Crypt of the NecroDancer by Brace Yourself Games, which again, what an excellent logo they have. It's just hilarious. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess this was my one that I brought to the table. So what did you think, Elliot?
I really like this game, but I also worry that I have an unhealthy relationship with it.
What does that mean?
I find myself getting incredibly frustrated, and after I play, I'm just really mad. But also, I love it when I'm playing it, and I can't stop. I feel like this is what Dota players talk about, where it's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel that. A game that gets its hooks into you in a way that
yeah,
it scratches a psychological itch, but actually kind of upsets you a bit to play.
yeah, and like the upsetting part comes in. I think I'm just naturally terrible at this game, and so it's just frustrating to play because I'm not good at it. But also, yeah, just the quick cycles that we're going to talk about, like the fact that you can just sort of jump straight back in when you fail. I found it really hard to make myself stop because I kept wanting to get the win. It was similar to when we streamed Barbar as you, and I'd have 5 hour streams because I refused to go halfway through a puzzle.
Yeah.
And that was like a really bad thing. I felt like I kept doing that in Crypt.
Yeah,
So
like, oh, if I just spend another 30 seconds, I'll definitely make it to the next,
yeah,
goal that I've set for myself.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, the problem was I liked the game too much in a way.
Yeah. So I picked this game obviously because I really love it. I wanted to dive into it again. I guess I was kind of hoping that coming at it again now that we've started doing the game club, I would be able to look at it and find more things that I wanted to like talk about critically. I don't
Yeah.
have any of those. I have things that I absolutely love about this game, and we will get into those. But just like overall, it just is such a clever concept, right? Like the way the basics of the game is just so clever. It's so like as a roguelike, the rhythm elements make it so kind of naturally compelling just because that's what humans are like.
Yeah, yeah.
but but also makes the game more frantic because you can't just kind of sit back and observe too much. You have to be kind of actively doing things because you have inherent pressure to be moving and going. And
Yeah.
it just feels like such a tight concept. It's just wonderful. I love it so much.
Yeah, because it's merging a lot of like standardy grid puzzle sort of stuff, and adding
Yeah.
that rhythm to it just sort of adds this one extra layer where not only do you have sort of something else, like you need to dedicate a small part of your brain to maintaining the beat, you also, yeah, it adds that time pressure, like you say, because it's not just that the enemies are coming at you, but the combo system really makes that, because the combo system encourages you to keep moving.
Yeah, but it's not like I don't feel like the combo system is that much of a draw in the sense of like if there was a combo system and it wasn't tied into the beat that much, I don't think you would care about it. Like it's fine, but it's not like an incredibly enticing combo system where you're like, oh, I really have to keep my combo up. Just because there's something there, it's enough to make you want to stick to the beat for some minor benefit. Because it also just feels good to do. Like I
Yeah,
just love that the design can be pretty light, use a pretty light touch on these things because as humans we just want to play it the way the game wants us to play it, and that's just wonderful.
yeah, that's a really good point. It cuts both ways because yeah, you're right. Like the thing with the combos is I didn't usually feel good because I was keeping my combo. I felt good because it felt fucking badass to like
Yeah.
always be doing something and like yeah, just sort of keep to the rhythm. Whereas like sometimes when I was having a bad run or I was trying to be careful, I would just stop and like let a skeleton come at me and like intentionally lose my combo, and that always just felt like the shit basic way to play the game. Like, whereas when I would
Yeah.
jump around the side of them and outplay them, like, and keep up the momentum, it just made me feel like a badass.
Yeah, I think this one of the reasons I love this game so much is I really do love roguelikes, and something that I think is really strong, like emotionally about a roguelike is the concept of mastery that you get when you're playing it, when you kind of feel like you nail the systems. That's such a good feeling, and that's to me the driving emotional like payload of a roguelike. But Crypt does it in such a the fact that it ties it into music is just so simple, but makes that payoff like a million times better. It's
Yeah.
just so satisfying.
But as you said, like the balance it introduces into the puzzle of the room, because you have that time pressure, and
Yeah.
you have the game and yourself kind of willing you to keep doing stuff. It puts you in this weird zone of like I think the thing I really found compelling about this is in the other roguelikes, it's been about learning the systems
Mm,
and kind of learning how to react to them. In this one, it was very much I wasn't needing to just learn how things worked. I needed to learn patterns I could implement very quickly and consistently. Like,
mm,
whereas in Hades, there were a few enemies where I was definitely like, oh yeah, I figured out a way to fight this enemy that takes forever and is shit. But
mm.
like wins it for me. Whereas in Crypt, I was very incentivized to be able to just very quickly look at a group of enemies and think, oh, okay, this is my priority list. This is how I kill that enemy. Like, yeah, not just learn the system, but learn a way to approach it very quickly. Like, I just think that's an extra layer that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. The inherent, the fact that there is an inherent time limit to each level as well does give you means you can't you don't have to really rush, but you can't be fully just
Yeah,
sitting back
fucking
and
around.
relaxing.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Which I think it nails that. Um, just nails the timing and pacing so well.
yeah,
I just love. I it's hard for me to think like how many things just kind of naturally clicked into place versus how many things were very intentional decisions. I don't really know that, but it all just
yeah.
works so nicely. Like,
Like with
yeah,
the combo system, to go back to what you said there, I can totally see it being a thing where they started playing it and they were intentionally doing what we were saying. Like they were just starting to like try and always keep moving, and then like as they started doing that early on, they're like, oh, maybe this should be like the combo system. Like you should reward people for always moving.
mm,
Or then on the other hand, maybe they put some people in it, other playtesters, and they just weren't moving, and they're like, oh, we need to incentivize them to move. Like
yeah,
it's such a natural system that I could see it being either way. Like it could have been a response, or it could have been a natural like, oh, people are doing this anyway.
or even just like a lot of rhythm games like that have combos. Like
Yeah,
Beat Saber or DDR or whatever, like the classic rhythm games where you're doing an action to a beat. they all have combo systems, and so it's a
Right. Yeah.
very natural evolution of or like pillar of the genre that can be pulled in. So yeah, but it just really, I don't know, it just all really clicks into place so nicely.
Yeah. It really does.
um, have you ever played any other like grid-based roguelikes or grid-based dungeon crawlers? I think one of the main ones that I know of is Dungeons of Dreadmore, which is a grid-based roguelike dungeon crawler. Um, but then there's like the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games and stuff like that, which are grid-based, uh, like dungeon crawly games as well. Or
Yeah.
Pokemon, the Mystery Dungeon, I guess, is the series name. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is the spin-off, but that's the only one that I've ever
There are
played.
non-Pokemon mystery dungeon games.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like a
Huh.
Mystery Dungeon. It's like a series.
I
It's
didn't
like
know that.
Hyrule Warriors is Dynasty
Yeah.
Warriors or whatever.
Yeah. I didn't actually know
Anyway.
that. No, I don't. I mean, the only roguelikes I've played are the ones in the catalog for Game Club. I've never played a non-Game Club roguelike. Um, I can't really think of any grid-based movement stuff. Like, I'm thinking that reminds me of something like Fire Emblem, but I've never really played those.
Mm,
Yeah, so no, not really. Like, that was definitely a bit of the learning curve for me. Is I haven't played many games with grid-based movement like this, so there was
mm.
definitely like stuff that I felt like would probably be very obvious to people who've played a lot of other grid-based movement games. Um, but like I still sort of just a lack of practice basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Anyway, yeah, I mean, like, I really was into Dungeons of Dreadmore for a while. It's quite a fun game. And it's like, you move and then the enemies move, and it's very like, that's a very standard
Yeah,
turn-based, grid-based dungeony thing. But putting it all to, like, fuck yeah, putting it all to this beat is just amazing. It's
yeah.
just great.
It's a really good. It's one of those things where I started playing it and I was like, oh, yeah, of course you would. Like,
Yeah, like immediately it
yeah,
clicks and you're like, oh shit, this is just immediately. How is
yeah.
this not a thing before?
I'm surprised there aren't more games just blatantly ripping it off. To be honest, like I think
Mm,
you don't have to be as musically oriented as Crypt is, but the idea of beat-based movement, I'm surprised hasn't just been made more common because it's inherently fun. I
yeah,
think it really
yeah.
balances like decision paralysis against like just punishing you for rushing in.
Yeah, I do think more um, rhythm and music based mashup genres are coming along. So we'll see.
Yeah.
See how it goes. But yeah,
Just
let's.
just to comment on Bird's comment in the chat, they're saying how it's really impressive how well they made the level timing. Like they
Mm,
never ran into the limit unless they were sort of intentionally, running around. And I think like that was true for me as well. I can't really think of a time where I ran out of time on the level like by surprise. Like it was generally I'd cleared the level and now I was running around trying to see if I could go back to the shop and then cut back to this like apple that I'd left on the other side. Like it was when I was trying to do cleanup at the end that the song would
mm.
run out.
Yeah, but again, like, it's just kind of song length.
Yeah,
I guess they've determined the level size and the enemy health and stuff to judge how long a thing will take.
yeah,
It's just so nicely tuned
yeah.
to be a really good solid level size.
I'm just realizing we don't really have a slide on the map design, so now we should get to one of our slides where we have gameplay so people aren't just staring at this logo the whole time. But
Yeah, sure.
remind me to talk about map design at some point because we should give
All
that
right.
credit, and we
Yeah.
haven't. Um,
So let's
I'll play
talk
this clip
about,
that you've picked out. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this one's got audio, so maybe just like turn it down a bit, but
What? Oh, you son of a bitch!
yeah.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah. So this was a clip I took during your stream, Elliot. And I'll just let you get to the point where you die. It'll come up soon
I'm
enough.
so bad about that. This is such a good run. Oh, idiot.
But the thing I really
Fuck.
loved about this clip is, like, the way that the game works. The enemy patterns are so simple in isolation, but because it's procedurally generated, they always lead into such interesting combos. So I love this clip where I'm pretty sure this is the first time you had this happen to you. A
Yeah.
wind guy pulled you into a trapdoor before you had fought the boss, so you
Yep.
dropped down and had to fight the boss in the next stage. And I just thought that was wonderful because I'm sure that's an experience that they intended, with the wind and the teleportation guys that can move you around and stuff like that. They intended things like this to happen, but they can just let the game do it at its own pace because it's just gonna you'll run into stuff like this. You'll
Yeah.
see different combinations and different wild things that happen very frequently. And I just think that's wonderful.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the systems in this game combine in really interesting ways. And like watching Bob this morning play with other characters I hadn't seen. And some of those characters would like change which enemies appear in which zones and stuff. I was amazed at how smoothly it all still fit together.
Yeah, it's yeah, again, just a testament to like the cohesiveness of the design, I suppose, that you can
Yeah.
have these things that tweak and change and it all just fits into this very compelling base gameplay layer.
Yeah. And like the enemy variation in the game shouldn't go underrated either because this might be one of the best examples I've seen of like almost all the variations add something as well as just like give them more hearts. Like I'm thinking of, in Breath of the Wild, there's like 10 different colors of Bokoblin and it just changes how much health they have and how much damage they do. Like it's a very simple sort of buff thing for each color. Whereas in this one, like a skeleton, like, they start getting shields, they start getting mounts later on. I'm thinking like the dragons, each different dragon shoots different breath stuff. When you get to the gold armadillos, they start doing diagonals as well as straight lines. Like they didn't just buff the enemy health, but like and the blobs as well. Every different color of blob has a different pattern. Like they just it's extra level of care put into the enemy design.
The thing that I find, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going to keep bringing up that just the core design of this game is so clever. But even the enemies that do just get more health, it fundamentally changes
How you
how you
approach them.
get to them. Because if you can't kill an enemy on your first hit, you have to also think about how you're going to escape from
Escape.
an
Yep.
enemy once you've hit them once, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'll
that's like
get in and hit them, and then I'll have to back away without getting hit, and that is an additional challenge that gets layered on the more hearts an enemy has as well, which is so wonderful.
yeah, the enemies I can think of that are just that, where it's just the same thing with more health. The more health changes how you have to fight them. Like the mushrooms we've got on screen at the moment, those are two of the
Yeah,
purple
exactly.
mushrooms. You have to approach them entirely differently because they shoot so much more frequently. Um, that it changes it. The rock monsters, some of the rock monsters have extra health, and it means you don't really. At least I wasn't able to see that until I started hitting them, and then you'd be like, "Oh shit, I have to like totally change how I was going to do this because they're going to take 3 extra hits." Um, yeah, I really like that. The way the zones are set up too, like each zone doesn't just have enemies which I feel good. Like this forest zone, zone 2, has like a lot more forest themed enemies. But each one almost has like a bit of a theme. Like the zone 3 has like the fire and ice theme.
Yeah, Zone 3 especially feels like the enemies feel very heavily themed into it. In
Yeah,
fact, it's fire and ice, and some enemies will go between their fire and ice forms depending on which part of the map you're in,
yeah.
which is fun.
Like that one's definitely the most thematic. But like even zone 4, how it's like broken up into like walled gardens, and it sort of changes the pace because that one's full of a lot more enemies who will charge you in different ways. So it almost becomes this pattern of like break into a room and then like figure out how to get through all the enemies that are instantly going to charge you. Um,
Exactly. Then watch out for the four things that are going to come running.
yeah, exactly, and that's when they introduce things like teleport enemies who are going to like change where you are and force you to think on your feet if you kill them improperly. The parry guys just become an obstacle unless you can get their timing exactly right. Like it's yeah, it's really cool how each zone introduces new mechanics in that way. Like the parry boys are such a great example of just like I had to change completely how I approached a group of enemies because I was like, well, I either need to get them out the back or kill them first because they just block my attacks and screw me over.
Yeah, if you're not timing it right, you're running into trouble with these folks.
Yeah. Um,
I also do like uh, the mini bosses that you fight, one mini
yeah.
boss per. Just they feel like they're the perfect level of variety and difficulty, right? Like a mini boss will come in and you'll be like, oh, okay, I can deal with this one, especially with my current gear. But now I've got these other monsters that I have to worry about. Like they've always got a few kind of lieutenants around
Yeah,
them ready. Um, yeah, the mini bosses to me are maybe the highlight of the combat in the game because they're all
yeah,
just like interesting. They've got much bigger kind of patterns that they will do, much more imposing patterns, and I always just find that delightful.
yeah. I agree. They were usually the highlight for me. The difficulty is interesting though because the dragon versus the banshee is like a massive difference in difficulty. Like if you get that banshee lady coming at you, it's just like, oh well, worst case scenario, I can just stand here and kill her easily. Um,
Mhm.
Whereas like with the dragon, if you have the space, the dragon is incredibly easy. If you don't have the space, the dragon's impossible.
Dragon is really the enemy to me. Where when you see it's coming, you have to look and be like, okay, I need to prepare to fight
Yeah,
this one.
yeah. I need to clear a space so that I can fight this dragon properly. Yeah. Whereas like the Minotaur is usually just like, yeah, okay, I'll let him charge at me here, take some pot
Then,
shots.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Last thing, in this variety section, I quickly wanted to touch on the character variety. I didn't play too many different characters, but I watched other people do that, and I think it might be the best case we've seen in any of the roguelikes so far of introducing new like characters to spice up the gameplay.
Mm.
Um, like the bard is obviously a super interesting one because it lets you just ignore like half of the game's idea. I found it really useful as a training tool when I would first get to a new zone because it gives you the space to learn patterns in isolation. Um, but then you get something like the monk, who I learned about today. The monk is fascinating. So the monk, you die if you pick up gold, and it's such a small change, but it fundamentally changes the way you approach a level because now you have to be careful where you kill enemies because you can't go back there.
Yeah, if you kill an enemy on a square, that square is unavailable to you.
Yeah. Like that's such a clever way to not change anything, but fundamentally change the way you have to approach the game. Especially
Mm.
because in skinny corridors and stuff. Um, yeah, I love the character changes they introduce. And like Bolt, I saw Bolt today, who plays at double speed, and it was just ridiculous.
Rough. Oh, Bolt. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess going back to the mini bosses, I also wanted to talk about the bosses themselves. So I'll
Mm.
play this clip quickly.
Oh, whoops. Oh, shit, I made it to the boss. Oh, God.
This is after like
I don't want to
3
die
hours
here.
in
It took me
zone
so long
2.
to get here.
I had no idea what was happening at this point.
Oh, boy. Wait, that's it? The bosses in this game are so underwhelming.
And this is essentially what I wanted to talk about. Is like
I definitely want
the bosses in this game compared to the mini bosses are very easy in my experience. I don't know how much some of that is like a build that lets you get to the boss is just going to be inherently one of the better ones. Um, like it's very unlikely you're going to reach the boss with a dagger and like no charms or whatever. But still, my experience with almost all the bosses was I killed them very quickly and easily.
That's interesting. So I don't remember having that experience when I played it early on. I remember it being relatively easy for me to get through most of the game, most of the level, but then the bosses would always pose a different challenge for a bit. So I suspect there's a bit of like the more difficult you find the core gameplay, the bosses don't add that much challenge there, but they do have kind of more complex and weird patterns. Like, it took me ages to figure out how King Konga worked, and the fact that if you did the wrong beat, he would come and attack you while all the conga lines were also attacking you.
Oh, is that how he worked? I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because I had the slippers on, I think I was never losing my combo.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, it's interesting. I definitely had some experiences where the bosses really felt quite tough to me. Like Deep Blue, I remember would kill me so frequently until
Which
I
one's Deep Blue?
Deep Blue is the chess one.
Right.
Deep Blues. Is it Deep Blues or Deep Blue? I don't know.
So that is
Anyway.
the one boss who killed me, and it was because I stuffed up with like 2 pieces left to go. I was very mad. But like that again, first time I fought it, I was able to like 80% kill the boss, and then I made a stupid mistake and lost.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I, just compared to the mini bosses, I thought the bosses were very easy. And I'm willing to
Yeah.
admit, like I didn't get anywhere near the end game of this game, right? Like I'm sure the end game bosses are a lot harder, just based
Yeah,
on
I
how this
remember
game's
having
gone.
trouble with the boss of Zone 4 and the final boss at some point, but it's interesting. I do suspect there's an element of, since you've spent a lot of time getting, working your way through the more difficult, or what you found more difficult in the base game, that it's comparatively not as difficult for the boss for you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. It was just interesting to me that I would find I usually found the mini bosses much more of a challenge, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think it's worth talking about. We've done a few roguelikes now for Game Club, right? And I remember we were playing Into the Breach. It was, and this was one of the reasons I wanted to bring in Crypt. Was we were playing Into the Breach, and uh, you were having this experience of not liking the core thing of a roguelike, of needing to restart because you lost progress and you felt like you had to kind of redo the base game, which was fun, but not fun when you had to keep redoing it. So I was thinking about what a good roguelike could be to bring, and this one where the core gameplay is just so like psychologically compelling, I thought would really appeal to you. Plus, it has quite short loops. So I guess I'm just kind of curious if this has cured you of your roguelike hatred.
So it was funny. Like you can see in our notes here, I copy pasted what I'd written before you wrote that slide, which is basically me saying, I think I actually enjoyed this as a roguelike because the runs are so short and you get
Mm.
to keep progress like because it's divided into zones. So to answer your question, essentially yes. The issues I had with this game had nothing to do with it being a roguelike. I think this is the first time I've actually really felt like that formula worked for me.
Mm.
Um, which is funny because I came in this month with the mission of trying to learn how to enjoy roguelikes, and I didn't end up having to do that for this one. It just sort of happened naturally. But yeah, the short runs, the fact that it's very quick to just restart if you're having a bad one. Yeah, the permanent upgrades, like all those more roguelitey aspects. The different, like, yeah, the fact that each zone you can just start in a zone as opposed to like Into the Breach, I would find annoying because it sort of wanted you to do every zone every run.
Mm.
Which Crypt of the NecroDancer has that if you're interested. But yeah,
Yes, you can unlock all zones mode afterwards. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I thought this would suit your taste for roguelike, because it is, I guess it's a lighter roguelike
yeah.
than we've probably done before.
But yeah, I think the
But
big difference for me was the short runs. Like realistically, even a very long, intense run, like the worst ones you're losing 10 minutes, which would
yeah.
be that's like 2 scenarios that you've done in Into the Breach. Like that, you haven't even cleared the first zone in 10 minutes of Into the Breach.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I found this. I yeah, the roguelike thing. This was the first time I've ever been like, oh, this game is better as a roguelike.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. That's very reassuring for my hypothesis.
Yeah,
um, the other thing that I think Crypt does that other roguelikes, I haven't seen any other roguelike do, is in Crypt you can practice against any boss, mini boss, or just enemy in the game.
yeah.
which is interesting because a lot of the times in a roguelike like the mastery, the kind of price to pay for mastery is you have to play enough to get up to the thing that you died against, right? Oh, I have to play to get up to the boss so I can have another try at them or whatever. But Crypt doesn't force you to do that. I mean, you can, but of course you can also just go and try them, try it out. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I guess because especially in this game, each enemy's like shtick is so distinct. Like each one's gonna have its completely own pattern that gets comboed with others. Like we're gonna get into how the game teaches you to play in a minute, but I think it was necessary for this one as opposed to say, like in FTL, you'd encounter a new race and they're fundamentally the same, but they have one gimmick on top of the core
Yeah,
mechanics. Whereas in
yeah,
this one, each enemy's essentially completely unique.
yeah, yeah, definitely. You're right. In Into the Breach, it's more, you've got this thing which is like a modifier on your experience, but it's not going to fundamentally change it.
Yeah, or like you'd encounter like, a new variant of whatever the psychic bugs were called in Into the Breach.
Yeah,
And well, Into the Breach was easy because it would just tell you what they did. That
yeah,
one's almost not worth. But like with Slay the Spire, like similarly, like you'd encounter a new sort of enemy, and you very quickly get an idea for what they are and how they work because it's still the same fundamental. They attack you or they do some weird effect that it's going to tell you what
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Crypt is like, until you're familiar with an enemy, you're not really going to be able to predict much what it's going to do.
Yeah, and you have to kind of be very defensive about it as well because you don't fully know what the pattern of this enemy is going to be. So you have to
Yeah.
stress out that it's going to do something that you weren't expecting. The first time you hit a parry guy, you're not expecting them to not take damage and then lunge at you.
Yeah, like the parry guys took me like a good 5 minutes to figure out when I first hit zone 4, and it was one of those things where when I finally figured them out, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." But I
Mm.
was lucky in that I kept getting them in isolation in my first runs. Um,
Yes.
if they'd been all over the shop with other enemies, I probably would have had to jump out and learn to practice with them.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I like the practice, especially because I think the skill in this game, it doesn't come from fighting an individual enemy; it's the combinations. Like,
Yeah, it's learning, okay, how can I sequence these enemies in a way that I can deal with, or how can I get in and kill this one enemy without the other
yeah,
ones all getting me?
yeah, the challenge is never even the mini boss. The challenge is, oh
Mm.
shit, this mini boss has a bunch of
Yeah.
skeletons next to it, and they're gonna fuck me up while I try to kill the mini boss.
Yeah. Oh, suddenly there's two things attacking me and I have to figure out how to hit one without getting hit by the other.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of practicing against fighting, should we talk about the tutorial? Because I know this is something
Yeah,
that you were struggling with.
yeah. I'll play this this footage with audio, just to sort of sell what happened. If I don't want to. Sorry,
What does that
so
mean?
Ruben has just informed me I can attack people without throwing the dagger.
It's
which
the
was
same.
news to me.
No, it's different. Okay. I was about to say. Oh, I didn't realize that. Ugh. What else can I do apart from throw it? Ow.
This is adorable to me. So now you just don't have a weapon.
I'd love to do that because I keep accidentally fucking forgetting that throwing takes two. What would be the term? Turns? Right, I can just run into them. And that one was dumb because it was moving into that one at the same time I was, even though I was attacking it. Okay. I think I'm getting it. Oh dear.
Yeah, so that obviously, as you can see, that's like 15 minutes into my first session. But yeah, so the way the tutorial works is it teaches you to throw the dagger and then gives you other enemies, but it doesn't actually tell you you could just like run into them.
So I don't think it does. Does it teach you to throw the dagger? Doesn't it just
Yeah.
tell you can?
I think it does. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I was just reading the screen. Anyway, yeah. The point is
Yeah,
I
because
didn't.
it does say B or whatever the button to throw the
Yeah.
dagger is on the screen. So I'm not surprised that you learned, oh, I have to press B and then throw the dagger
Yeah.
rather than just walk into the enemy. I'm
And
surprised they didn't like disable that or something in the tutorial.
yeah, because because then you get the broadsword in the tutorial, and that's the one where you can just walk into them. So I was like, oh, okay, so some weapons are like that, but the dagger isn't. And yeah, it wasn't until I think this was like my third or fourth run where you and Cyberhomes finally like corrected that misconception. But yeah, this essentially touches on what I want to talk about, which is I think that in general, this game does a really bad job of teaching you how to play it. Would be like one of my main criticisms. There's two aspects to learning how to play it. There's obviously the stuff we've talked about, like learning enemy patterns and stuff. I actually think it's great at that. Like some of my favorite times playing this were when I would first reach a new zone and you get to like discover how all the new enemies work. I actually really enjoyed that part. Like the thing that I think it really sucks at was that, yeah, I thought, the tutorial obviously left me very confused about how it works. And then also the item descriptions and stuff are kind of so compressed to fit on the screen to the point of often being useless or even misleading.
Yeah.
Like it was at the end of my fourth and last session yesterday that I learnt that blood weapons don't drain your health.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had been intentionally going
your
past
health.
blood weapons the whole time because I thought they drained your health.
I don't know if you can blame the game for that or not. I think blood weapons just say like more damage when low health, kill to heal or something like that.
Yeah, and then I kept getting them and I just lose extra health. And like yeah, like like I guess this is the thing, and like a lot of these things, like some of the ring descriptions are just sort of so vague that like when I had Bob in the comments, he'd just be like, he would sort of tell me, oh, so what this does is like XYZ, and I'm like, I wish there was a way that the game would tell me that like when I bought it, and then yeah, like give me the super like shortened version when I'm in a level. But I wish there was like a way for me to look at my list of rings and get a detailed description of what they do. Because just the amount of times I would like start getting items and I was like, I have no idea what this does. And there were so many that like I wasn't learning them reliably. It was probably the other part of that. Like, you pick up the scrolls and I couldn't remember all the scrolls I had access to.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I think I loved learning the enemies, and I never had a problem with that aspect of it. It was the other stuff around the enemies that I felt like the game was doing a terrible job. Anything I had control over was generally the stuff I think the game didn't do well at teaching me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard for me to put myself back in that headspace because I wiped my save file when we started it for this, but obviously I still know how the game works, so
yeah.
I can't completely be going in blind.
So yeah, this is obviously me practicing against skeletons and figuring out all the edge cases, but
God, actually, something else. The fact that the floor goes disco mode when you have a combo, again, such a cool little thing. I love it.
Yeah, great detail. Especially because, like, for me, when you can't hear the music super well while you're playing, the lights are a great way to make sure you keep to the beat too.
Yeah, so this is the other thing that we need to talk about, Elliot. I feel like for your first 2 or 3 streams, you had your setup configured so you couldn't really hear the music.
I could hear it a bit, but it was hard.
I remember, I think it was your third stream where I told you to change it, and you did, and immediately you got about 40% or 50% better at the game.
It definitely switched things so that I was now only dying to tactical mistakes, not the fact that I was missing about like once every 6 beats.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I don't understand why you had yourself.
My streaming setup for consoles is so bad. I've been saying this a lot in the streams. I can't wait to move in a couple of months and not have this shitty convoluted setup because it's terrible.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it was something that made me miss a lot more than I needed to, but it didn't improve my gameplay that much. I didn't think.
I mean, look at what's happening right now, Elliot. Did you see? You just had a string of like 8 misses, all within about 15 or 16 beats. And yeah, I mean, you were against slime, so it didn't really matter. But against actual monsters, it definitely will.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the other thing, there needs to be better feedback about misses, and this is a complaint anyone who's tuned into my streams would have known is coming here. I like because watching it now, it's very easy to see the word miss come up out of the heart,
Yeah.
but you can't see that while you're playing. Like you're too
Mm.
focused on Cadence herself, and she's too far above it. And I wish there was an audio cue or something for when you miss, because I would have so many deaths where I wasn't sure why I died. Like, did I misjudge the pattern or did I miss a beat? And it was so frustrating constantly not knowing what the reason I died was because of that.
Yeah. I think that helped you build some bad habits of like ascribing things to enemy behaviors and stuff that you had just kind of invented because you had missed a beat.
Well, yeah, for ages I thought that one of the things blobs could do is randomly they double jump. And it turns out it's because if you miss the beat a certain way, like the game very quickly skips one of the beats, like because of the buffer built in. So it turns out, yeah, I was just regularly missing beats that would make the blobs double jump. And because I didn't realize I was missing beats, I just thought that was a function they had where every now and again they just suddenly double jump. And yeah, it wasn't until you know halfway through my third session that I realized that wasn't the case.
Wow.
So
Well,
yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I think the game could do better at giving you feedback on when you've missed a beat.
No, I agree. I think it would, because like obviously you lose your combo, which might mean the disco floor goes back to normal. But if you haven't really got a combo consistently, that's not great. There's also, I remember
you lose it when you take damage as well. So that doesn't really, because you know if it's coming down to is it the enemy pattern or the fact that I missed the beat, it doesn't tell you if it's like because you took damage. Because I'm like, well, I took damage, so I've lost the combo, but I don't know why.
Yeah, there's an audio cue when you lose your disco floor as well, but of like a record scratch, which I had assumed, like I just in my head had ascribed that to be the missing a beat sound because that was when I heard it. But if you don't have the disco floor, it doesn't play, which was something that we found out when I was like, no, I can hear it every so often. I hear it. Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, that would probably be like the main thing that like if I had a time with the developers and they were somehow wanting to patch this nearly decade-old game, I'd be like, this is what you need to add.
Yeah.
I wonder what. I did look up what Brace Yourself Games is working on now.
They're working on a game called Industries of Titan at the moment.
Yeah, well, they've got two. They've got another one. Or I think it's just still coming out on some platforms. But yeah. Unfortunately, they seem to have moved away from rhythm-based stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's so sad.
Yeah. I'd happily, again, I'm surprised this hasn't just been stolen more as a mechanic. I think other games could make use of this idea more easily.
What about a rhythm-based Bubba Is You? You know, that's grid-based. I'm sure you could plug some rhythm mechanics into that somehow.
Oh, you totally could with, like, the way words suddenly move or, like, change or something. There'd be some god-awful way to make Baba Is You work with rhythm that would be torturous.
It would be hilarious. I reckon a rhythm-based fighting game could work. Like a Street Fighter type game.
Well, because arguably, I mean, they're already based a lot on timing.
Exactly.
So, like, adding rhythm to that seems like a natural fit,
David White in chat says Baba is dance, which is a good name for it, or beat, or Babeat is you, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, geez, those are both good. God, that game would be awful though. Like Baba Is You is hard enough, you know, like.
Yeah, but it's hard. The game just wouldn't work because Baba Is You is hard because it's a puzzle game. It's not hard because like the inputs you have to do are complex.
Yeah, well, and so that's what you're adding on top.
Yeah, it would be. Oh yeah, you're right. It would be a fucking nightmare.
Like if you added enemies or something, like basically what you're trying to add with this is time pressure, so that you've got other things to distract you while the puzzle's evolving. Like, oh, it'd be awful. I want to play the first 2 levels of that game and then not the other remaining 98.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think something that deserves its own call out in this game is the fact that the shopkeeper will sing along to the soundtrack, and that's just exceptional. So let's just all enjoy that.
It definitely, like, it's interesting that it's just him.
Yeah, I think it's just wonderful. Like, we'll talk about the soundtrack in a moment, but the vibe of as you approach the shop, you start hearing the shopkeeper singing along,
Yeah.
and then you get it, and he's just like belting out along to the song.
Oh, because he really takes
It's
over the
just
melody.
wonderful.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's awesome. It's like, again, just like a fucking brilliant idea that just absolutely sells the vibe of this game so perfectly. Because it's so goofy, but also like so, it adds such a like epicness to
Yeah.
it.
Well, and it, like, everything in this game has some sort of music theme generally, and it adds to that. Like, the shopkeeper sings because it's a music game.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a good example of, like, this game is full of a lot of details that really just elevate it from a good game to a great game. Like, that's one. You got me to watch the credits earlier today, and like all of the enemies have dumb pun nicknames. That's another one. Yeah, all those little details like that really just elevate how much you connect with a game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the fact that some of the enemies are like have musical instrument themes and stuff,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know, instead of some weapons, they'll have like a harp or whatever, right? And that's always wonderful. Or specifically, the harpies have harps for wings in
yeah,
Zone
yeah.
4, which is one of my favorite little details because
Oh,
they're harpies.
The Minotaur has a harp on his
Oh, yep,
head.
that's true.
Um, one of the bosses as well, like Deep Blue, the chess one is obviously taking from the grid imagery.
Yeah,
But all the other bosses I fought, at least, like, you know, it's like a conga line or
yep.
like an orchestra. Like, they're all very musical
Choral
themed.
riff, yeah.
Yeah,
They're wonderful.
yeah, 100% agree.
Or the notorious DIG, Fortissimo, the king himself.
I did listen to that song. It's pretty good.
It is. It's wonderful. It's my favorite song in the soundtrack just because of how like wild it is. I mean, speaking of the soundtrack,
Yeah.
what a great soundtrack to this game, am I right? Also, we should briefly touch on the fact that Cadence of Hyrule exists, e.g., this game was so awesome it made Nintendo hand over their most wonderful property to this indie developer team.
Yeah, Zelda is the franchise I'd say they're actually the most cautious with. Like, obviously, it's gotten a lot of spin-offs recently, but they've been very carefully chosen. Like Cadence of Hyrule, Hyrule Warriors, like, you know. Whereas, like, you know, with Mario, Nintendo is just kind of happy to throw him at whoever and see what they come up with, right? Like, Mario versus Rabbids is kind of an example of like Nintendo just being like, oh, do whatever the fuck. Well, it'll be fine.
But you know, that's Ubisoft or I don't know, the studio that makes Dynasty Warriors, but you know, larger teams. Whereas
yeah, this is a
Games
team.
is a hardcore indie team, right? And so just the fact that Cadence of Hyrule exists, and the fact that the Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack exists, which may be possibly the greatest contribution to mankind, is wonderful. I think the Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack is possibly the best video game soundtrack ever.
Yeah. I mean, the only ones that would compete with for me are other Zelda soundtracks. Like, yeah. I've listened to it a lot without having played either of these games before. I played 10 minutes of Cadence of Hyrule when it came out, and then just kept listening to the soundtrack but stopped playing the game.
But interestingly, have you now? Because there's the thing about the Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack that you maybe didn't realize is it has a lot of recurring themes and motifs from Crypt of the NecroDancer, right? Like, it is a blend of their two soundtracks, really. So I wonder if were there any songs in Crypt that you started to recognize from just having listened to the Cadence soundtrack?
Yeah, there were moments where I was definitely like, yeah, this sounds good, but like, because the Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack is definitely in the style of Crypt of the NecroDancer, it was hard to know whether I was just like attributing the stylistic things versus like actually noticing motifs. But yeah. To answer a question in chat from Bird about whether Cadence of Hyrule is easier, my understanding is the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's less of a roguelike. So you if you die or whatever in Cadence, you have some progression that you can kind of go back and try that spot again, which I think makes it it leans more into the Zelda vibe of like, you have hearts, yeah, but if you die, you're not gonna, you know, lose all your progress and have to start again. You can just kind of keep playing.
The framing I quite liked that you and Bob went through this morning was Cadence of Hyrule is more a Zelda game with some Crypt stuff in it. Like, it was made for Zelda fans to try and get them into Crypt. It's not made for Crypt of the NecroDancer fans to get them into Zelda, which obviously makes sense because one of those franchises is
It's much bigger. Yeah,
a lot bigger.
I do think it's a really cool game. Like, I really enjoyed it when I played it, but it didn't scratch the same itch as Crypt because it's not a roguelike. So I beat it once and I was like, yeah, I can beat it again. And the world will procedurally generate for you each time you play. So you can kind of treat it as a roguelike, but a roguelike where the runs are like 3 hours long or something. And I was like, oh, that's not really what I want from this. I'd rather just go play Crypt.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the selling point of Cadence for me is, it sounds like it's a bit easier, and also it's got Zelda stuff in it, and I like Zelda stuff. I'm a simple man.
And it does, I think the fact that it, like, the theming of Zelda really helps with things like new and interesting weapon variety and new and interesting enemy and boss variety as well. Like, some of the bosses in Cadence, I think, are really, really cool.
That makes sense. I mean, Zelda's got a lot of stuff to pull from, so it makes sense. I mean, the only reason Cadence of Hyrule is worse than Crypt of the NecroDancer, in my perspective, is that its soundtrack is only on YouTube and not on Spotify.
Yeah, God, how frustrating! I've got a clip of the full soundtrack on YouTube, and it's just not on. It's so frustrating that it's not on Spotify. Why is it not? I don't understand. I want to just be able to listen to it. And the other thing that annoys me is, because of the way Cadence of Hyrule works, there's a peaceful and a combat version of every song, which means the soundtrack is effectively doubled because there's 2 versions of each one, and then there's like also the shopkeeper versions and stuff. And I'm just like, I just want to listen to all the songs, not all these different versions. I have to hear each song 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, just go back. I remember watching the trailer for Cadence of Hyrule when it was first announced.
Yeah.
And didn't the developers briefly talk about it? It was like they went to Nintendo to basically ask for permission to do a DLC that was Zelda themed. That was like their pie in the sky goal was, will you let us use a tiny bit of your IP for a tiny DLC? And Nintendo came back from the pitch with like, do you just want to make it a whole game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably had done a version, like a song or something version, right? So for Zelda DLC, they did some songs, so this is what it would kind of sound like. And I'm sure Nintendo heard that and was like, this is awesome, just make this into a game, which is like the dream, right?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Well, that was what I remember. This is what they said in like the interview part of the trailer. He was just sort of like, this lead developer was like, yeah, we went to Nintendo pitching this DLC, which already felt like, you're going for gold to get access to their IP for a tiny thing. And then they come back to you and like make it a whole game. And it was just like, holy shit, like that. Yeah. What an absolute dream come true.
Yeah. I believe Ryan Clark is the lead developer and I think designed Crypt of the NecroDancer, and is like, I don't know what his role in Brace Yourself is, but seemingly up there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, great game. It definitely, I'm glad it got something like Cadence of Hyrule, because that was how I first heard about it. And like, great for them to sort of get that exposure through a huge IP.
Yeah. And what a cool, the original Cadence of Hyrule reveal trailer is still one of the hypest trailers I've ever seen. So good. So let's get back to the game for a bit, shall we? Because I think the other thing to talk about in a roguelike is like the randomness and the procedural generation of things, and the way that the runs change each time you play based on items and enemies and stuff. I think the weapons and items that you find in this game and the progression of that is really clever. Like, I wasn't aware until...
Sorry, I'll mute this one. We don't really need the music. But yeah, this is a clip of me buying a ring and then immediately finding it on the first floor of the next run. Because, well, as you were about to say, the game kind of rigs it. So right after you buy a weapon, it's like you almost certainly get it in your next run.
Yeah, you will see it the next time you open a corresponding chest of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is a really clever thing that I haven't seen a lot of roguelikes do, but it lets you really get a grasp on what the thing you've just got is, or give you the opportunity to get a grasp on what the thing you've just got is very quickly.
Yeah, I think like this is something that happened less in Crypt of the NecroDancer than has happened in a lot of the other roguelikes, is me getting overwhelmed by the number of systems that are thrown at me. It definitely still happened a bit, but like a big part of this is because the way the items work, like all the rings and the scrolls and stuff, they're added to the pool of items you can encounter after like you unlock them. And so what this means is not only are they giving it to you the first time to like teach it to you, but you're not being overwhelmed. Like, I'm thinking of like FTL. The first time you jump into FTL and like get to a shop and there's like 10 different weapons and you're like, I don't know what any of these do. Like, oh God. Like Crypt eases you in because you buy them one at a time. It gives them to you for free, so you should theoretically just be like, oh, this is what that does. And it didn't work for me because I'm an idiot and like, couldn't keep track of which scroll was which. But I really like that as a system to like allow you at your own pace to unlock each new element and then to give it to you pretty much straight away so that you can like try to get an idea of how it works. And if I wasn't an idiot, it would have been a great system.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. And I think the other thing that I really liked, and we talked about this a bit with Hades and stuff too, is like with the weapons and the weapon types, they really, because there's so much enemy variety, I don't think consistently I would ever say one specific weapon type is better than the others. I mean, apart from the fact that the dagger has shorter range, the others all have their own kind of benefits and drawbacks. And with the different types of enemies, that means you'll probably find a weapon that you really gel with, but you'll also find weapons that just do better against different types of enemies, which I think is really really wonderful. Like weirdly,
I have a great example of that, which is the whip. I never took the whip if I could really help it, because it just breaks my brain. Like I understand it academically, but in the moment I will always fuck up using the whip. Like I will go to move forward and hit an enemy 3 tiles over that I didn't realize was there.
That's the other downside to the weapons is the more range you have, the higher chance of you accidentally hitting an enemy that you weren't like planning to hit, and therefore getting stuck in a position you didn't want to get stuck in, which is such a great inherent balance to any weapon that's in there.
But like with the whip, if I was on a floor with the Minotaur and I was near a whip, I just quickly go grab it because the Minotaur is trivial with the whip. You just stand next to where he's charging and just flick forward a couple of times and you kill him. No worries.
Yeah,
not that he's particularly difficult with other weapons, but like,
the Minotaur is definitely the easiest mini boss in my mind.
I'd say the Banshee's easier, but
yeah. Well,
just
the Banshee for you, Elliot, you were playing the game without listening to the audio already, so the Banshee didn't do anything, do you?
I guess. Did she change the audio?
When you hit her, she silences the audio. Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
See, you didn't even notice.
I did not,
because you had the audio turned down so low.
Well, and also I always just copped the change to my the loss of my combo. So I would just stand there because you hit her and she backs away and then comes forward again. And rather than try to do anything sneaky, I just stand there and hit her 3 times.
Fair enough.
But yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I straight up didn't know that.
Yeah, she silences the stuff.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm glad Bird didn't know that either. There's dozens of us.
Oh, look, here she comes. So she screams, and then the word deafened appears. So let's go back and put the audio on, and you can hear it, Elliot. Just so we can validate this. Because it's driving me mental that you played so much without the audio on. Yeah, stuff.
Well, if I find a shop, I'll try that out. Oh boy.
Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Well, the spear certainly made that.
I guess I just
didn't even notice.
Didn't kill her within like 3 turns, so it never really mattered.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I guess to your point from before, like, yeah, the thing with the weapons is, yeah, I agree. For every weapon, I can think of a specific, or for every enemy, I can think of a specific weapon where I'm like, oh, that is the best weapon for that enemy or for that situation. Like even the mace you sort of get right towards the end of the game, which has like it does like 5 in front of you. And that was great, like, because it meant I was more able to just charge into a clump of like bats and just go to town.
Just start smacking.
Yeah.
Fucking bats. Bats are consistently the enemy that get you when you don't expect it.
They're the easiest to not take seriously and get burnt for it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, I agree. Like the thing with the weapons as well, like as you say, the cool thing is it's like that ideal sort of Call of Duty scenario where you're unlocking later weapons and they change things, but they're not kind of strictly better. Like you know, the swords and the rapiers you get early on, and they're still probably my favorites. But also the varieties within each weapon. So obviously you have like the rapier, and then you get like the titanium rapier, which does double damage. But then from there, they didn't just kind of keep scaling upwards. They introduced different things. So like, with the rapier, then you get the multiplier based rapier, or the one that's better.
Obsidian.
Yeah, after you get gold.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about like constantly increasing the numbers like a more linear game might do, but saying, okay, this one gets better only if you play a certain
In
way.
this situation, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's, I think, a titanium version which does 2 damage instead for
Yeah.
each weapon, and then there's the blood version which you heal and does more damage when you're on low health. There's the gold version which does high damage after gold pickup, and there's the obsidian version which does combo based damage. And there are some other ones. So for example, there's like a, I don't know what it's called, but it's a dagger that does 5 damage, but it's obviously
I got
a dagger.
that one once. It was ridiculous.
It's very strong, but it's a dagger,
It's
so
a dagger,
you've
yeah.
really got to be careful, which I think is wonderful. Like they really, the way that they've balanced the different items, I think is just, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I loved that idea of moving away from just constantly escalating the numbers, because if there'd been like 4 layers of rapier that just incrementally got better, it would have very quickly reached the point where I just like would look at a regular rapier and be disappointed.
Mm,
And that kind of still happened between the titanium and the regular rapier, but
mm.
I loved that shift from above 2 times damage. It switched to, you can do 3 or 4 times damage, but you have to earn it. I think
Yeah,
that's really
exactly.
clever.
Yep. Yeah. I guess one other thing I want to talk about with this game is just like, I think it's really cool. I've consistently come back to this game for years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I will keep coming back to it, and there's always more stuff to do. Like, this is a game that just has so much content because there's so many different characters and like kind of challenge run vibes that you can do, as well as having things like level editors and stuff. I haven't even got into level editors or
There's a
modding,
level editor?
but maybe I will at some point. But like, there's just so much to do in this game, and it's all like, here's the base game, beat it with cadence, and that's like you've beat it. Really, that's enough for you to be like, yeah, I've achieved something really cool here. But then there's so much other stuff that you can do as well. You can really play this game as much as you want, and that's not even mentioning the DLC, which adds new characters, bosses, and areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I haven't even really finished the story with Cadence yet, right? Not that I've been following the story. I like that the story is very optional in this game.
Mm.
But like, my understanding is, then there's like story for 3 other characters sort of after that. Then you've got all the other ones, the achievements for this game. There's so many. Like, it's very much it's a completionist's nightmare.
Yeah, I kind of like that it's a tough game, and there's a lot that you can do, which means if you're a completionist, you're really going to have to sink your time into this one. But if you're not, there's just like a buffet here for you.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Like, as someone who tends towards completionism, I get like a little upset by it. But then, like, I also like understand that that's not what this game is. This game wants you to come back every now and then,
Yeah.
and play it. Yeah. And for that, I think it's great. Especially like, we already talked about how great the character variety is, but I think that's a really beautiful angle for, like, 6 months from now, I might pick up Crypt and I might just be like, I'm going to play as the monk, like, because I've already kind of lost all my instincts. This is a good time to
Good time to
pick
avoid
up gold.
Yeah. And there's a character that does like pacifist runs and stuff, like, there's some cool stuff in this game. Some really cool challenges if you want to dive into them.
Like Bob from the Discord is very, very good at this game. He's got a lot of hours in it.
Very good.
And
Very fun to watch.
he's going for all the achievements. He's got quite a few of them. I think he's only a couple away. But like, some of them are ridiculous. He was showing me. So I pulled up a screenshot from Steam here of some of them. So there's like an all characters run where basically you have to do all zones with every character in a row, which is just like, that must take so long. And if you lose, it's like, fuck that.
What a try.
And then there's this character called Arya who does the zones backwards, only has half a heart, and if you miss the beat, you die.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do all zones mode with her without picking up any items, which, like, watching Bob do this, meaning she's like, he only gets to use the dagger. for like the whole
The standard dagger. Yep.
like it was ridiculous. Like, yeah, the skill ceiling for what this game wants you to like do to consider it complete is like fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just that there's a lot of content; a lot of it is fucking ridiculous.
I like that the polyamorous achievement is the same as the lowest of the low achievement in terms of completion, because completing an all characters run is so hard that only the most dedicated would do it, and then they would also do the all characters run without any items or shrines, which is fucking insane.
That's what I noticed as you got to the bottom of the list on Steam, because it orders them by completion. Basically, the bottom 5 were all this 0.3%, which is very much like when you hit the point where you can do any of these, you are dedicated and capable enough to do the other 4.
Yeah, only the most hardcore completionists would do these, and therefore they would do all of them.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do wish there was an easier version of this game, and I'm getting the impression the answer to that is, well, there's Cadence of Hyrule.
There's Cadence of Hyrule, yeah.
Because I definitely, I mean, you know, I played about 12 hours of this game all said and done, I want to say. Realistically, I spent 7 to 8 of those hours stuck in Zone 2. I really struggled with the difficulty in this game. And I do wish there was like an easier version. And there's the Bard. The Bard is kind of because it lets you not worry about the rhythm and turn it into a strategy game. But I didn't enjoy doing that because that took the fun out of it. Like it's just an average strategy game. The rhythm is what really elevates it.
Yes, for sure.
So it's interesting. Like Bird's asking for all of the story clips. I mean, I skipped most of them anyway. Like I think it's interesting because the story is. This is one of those games where the story is completely segregated from the gameplay. Like the story only really takes place in like cutscenes between.
There's some parts that aren't true there. The final boss fight is a little bit more story-esque in the fact that it's like, well, kind of. It doesn't have like dialogue or anything, but it very much plays into what the story is, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you're right. The story in this game is very much optional, like heavily optional. I do like the animations, and I do love a lot of the voice acting as well. But you really don't need to.
No, well, because of the way I played this game, like I had sort of lost track of the plot, and it was super simple. So for me, it was just kind of like I started getting the cutscenes, and I was like, I'm not really following the story. Like I'll just skip it. And I like that that's optional. Like compared to something like games that just force you to watch a bunch of cutscenes or understand what's going on, even though it's separate from the gameplay. The other alternative that I quite enjoy, like Into the Breach, was really good at integrating the story into the gameplay. So you had like lines of dialogue by the characters during the level.
That felt very kind of emergent and good in that way.
Environmental storytelling as well. Like this game did a little bit of environmental storytelling, but not too much. I guess as we're kind of talking about the story and stuff, I'll just open up the Q&A. If anybody has any cues, we can try and
Any questions? Yeah, man, what a game this is. I really just love that it exists, because I will just keep coming back to it over and over again. It's one of the few games that like I have on my Switch, I have on my PC, and I will just play it every so often. Like I feel like playing a game, but I don't really know what game to play. Oh, why don't I just go back to Cadence? I mean, sorry, to the NecroDancer and play that for a bit. Like,
I think after this I'm going to try and play Cadence.
It's a good game.
Yeah,
and a great soundtrack.
I do though. I've just reached Zone 4, so the last like half hour of my last stream, I finally hit Zone 4, and I spent about like half an hour playing around in it. Kind of got a vibe for most of the enemies, and I just really want to try and finish it, because that for me feels like the lowest level of like you have beat the game.
Yeah, definitely. Beating the final boss with Cadence is, I mean, it's a solid achievement, right? Like, despite there's a lot of harder things you can do, it's still a solid challenge.
And like that to me, like there's quite a few Game Club games where I want to go back and like 100% them, but I'm at least happy that like I finished it. Like so, Control and Hollow Knight, I got an ending, and I want to go back and do the rest of it. But like I'm happy that I got to the end. I don't feel like I've done that for Crypt. Yeah, but definitely check out the Cadence of Hyrule soundtrack on YouTube. Like,
On
if you like
YouTube.
Zelda music,
It's very
I
good.
generally just listen to Zelda music at work, and Cadence of Hyrule is a bopping remix of a lot of great Zelda tunes.
Mm, yeah.
Bert also asks Ruben, like, how much of the game have you done?
It's hard to say, like, because I wiped my save when we started it for Game Club, and before then I hadn't played in 6 months or so. But I think I've beaten the main story, and I've done. Yeah, I don't know. Unlocked a bunch of characters. I also have it on my Switch with the DLC, so I've played it a bit on there as well. So it's hard to fully say. Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah. How many of the characters do you reckon you've sort of finished the game with, or come close to finishing it with?
Like 5 or 6, four or five. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I've definitely done the main three, and then Bard, and I think I did. Did I do Eli? I can't remember. Eli's the guy who kicks his bombs. He's a very Bomberman-esque character. I can't remember.
um, yeah.
Probably, it's a safe bet.
So many good characters in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Some good shit. Some good shit in this game for sure. I'm looking through the achievements now, and I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Maybe I should try and do all these achievements.
Oh, not all of them. You're not that
Well,
crazy.
no, maybe not. Yeah, some of these are pretty wild. Oh, and Bob's doing the deathless mode, I think, which is get 10 wins in a row. So you just have to keep playing,
Yeah.
and then it restarts you after you win
Do you have to do that with a specific character?
with cadence. I
It's with
think.
Cadence.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, you could do that with the Bard if you wanted to phone it in,
Mm.
presumably. I mean, it wouldn't be fun and it would take fucking hours, but you'd do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Good times. Good times. Anyway. Oh, there's a very polyamorous achievement, which is complete all characters, including DLC run.
I did see
Wow.
that. I snipped the DLC achievements out of that screenshot, but they were equally as stupid.
They looked also pretty tough.
It was funny playing this game because the Switch version just comes with the DLC. Like, I don't think there's the option to get it without. And like talking to Bob, our resident sort of expert, or at least the one who chimed in on my streams, he hasn't really played with the DLC. Like, he uninstalled it on his PC because he just likes the systems from the core thing. And so it was interesting learning because the way it's integrated into the Switch one, you don't know what's DLC and what isn't. So it was interesting, like using something and suddenly Bob didn't know what was happening, and there was like something I knew how it worked better than he did.
I remember I saw you picked up the lightning dagger at one point, and I was like, "Oh, the lightning dagger! What's this?" But
Yeah.
that's because DLC, which is the lightning is a mechanic from the DLC, so just forgotten that it existed.
Yeah, whereas like Bob had never seen it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like it was kind of fun learning through him. Yeah, and like the overeating hearts, like you can get the apple where it overeats hearts. Apparently that's DLC.
Oh, that makes sense.
So yeah, a few things like that. That was quite fun learning what was DLC and what wasn't, because the lightning thing definitely felt unique as a weapon. So in retrospect, it wasn't surprising.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Are there any other questions or anything else to dive into? I don't think so. Just a fun game, y'all. Check it
Yeah.
out. Pretty fun.
I had a blast with this one. My issues with it are nothing to do with it being a roguelike, which was a fun change of pace.
Yeah.
I could see myself getting very into this game in a very bad way.
Hell yeah. Do it. Do it. You
No,
mad
I
lad.
shouldn't. But yeah, so I guess that's probably going to do it for us this week on the Game Club, or this month, I should say. And in fact, for the next month too, that's it for us. Because for those who don't know, next month Scott is taking over the Game Club, and probably at least one or two other Doof hosts. I'm not exactly sure who's joining him. He's kind of taken the lead on it. So I don't want to put people on the spot and then and then they find out they weren't coming. But yeah, so Scott and some other people will be covering The Forgotten City, which I had not heard of, and now I really want to play it, and I'm mad that I am just like kind of skipping this month.
Yeah, we can still play it.
I suppose, but the whole point was to give myself the extra time to work on other things. I shouldn't play too much.
True.
Yeah, we'll see. It sounds like a very fun game. I'm keen to check it out, and it's made here in Australia, which is fun. They're actually giving a talk at GCAP next week.
Oh, that's cool. Maybe
Because it started as a Skyrim mod, and then they turned it into their own game. So it's like on how to turn your mod into a game.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. That'll be on the 6th of November. So you can catch Scott and the others. Yeah, this will be a bit more story focused than what we do, which I'm sure a lot of people will be glad to hear. Yeah, available on all normal platforms.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I look forward to tuning in.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. All right, folks. Well, thanks for joining us. It's been a great time.
Don't forget the Doof Discord is where you can sync up with other people, playing The Forgotten City. I get the impression it's a bit like Outer Wilds, like it's very time loopy. So hopefully it'll be one that a lot of people will want to watch you on the Discord after they've finished it.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely check out doofmedia.com/Discord for the link and more info there.
Yeah. And so with all that said and done, we'll see you in a few months, but you'll see Scott next month.
See you, folks.